Good day, everyone. It is a great privilege and honor for me to be part of this learning session on digital citizenship. Particularly, today I am tasked to discuss on I Am Alert. Now, allow me to share my screen at this point. So, we will be talking about digital citizenship integration in the classroom. Interesting topic because we know that the world has been evolving, especially in terms of embracing digital technology, especially in terms of embracing new trends such as artificial intelligence, such as machine learning, deep learning. And along with that is the acceptance and appreciation of digital citizenship. Now, my topic is dubbed as I Am Alert. In this topic, our objective is essentially to understand laws and fundamental legal principles that govern digital citizenship for the academe, particularly the educators, which is the teachers, the students, and of course, the academic institutions. So what do we talk about today? My presentation consists of 4 parts, which the first part will be an introduction of myself, a very brief introduction of myself, and then we'll proceed to discussing briefly as well the laws that govern digital citizenship. After which, we will zoom into an in-depth discussion on the 5 digital commandments. And then we will end this topic with some concluding insights. So, are you all ready? I hope you're all ready. Allow me to briefly introduce myself. My name is Attorney RJ Sustiguer. I have been in the academe for the past 7 years as teacher, administrator, and school owner. Presently, I am the college president of Green Valley College, one of the the biggest higher education institution in Region 12. I also taught, and I'm also teaching in Mindanao State University College of Law, in San Beda Graduate School of Business, as well as in the Marketing Institute of the Philippines. Now, let's go directly to the laws that govern digital citizenship. I have identified 10 laws which actually impact or which actually govern digital citizenship. The first one is the Cybercrime Prevention Act of 2012. Now, basically, this law was created in order to address the void, which is how do we actually prosecute crimes that are committed online? The crimes that we have under the revised penal code is unclear in terms of its coverage on those crimes that are committed via the internet or via the World Wide Web. This particular law, which is a special penal law, addresses that void by covering those crimes, those identified crimes which are committed in the internet or in the virtual space. The second law, which governs digital citizenship, is on Anti-Photo and Video Voyeurism Act of 2009. Now, this particular law basically was legislated in order to prevent the unauthorized taking of videos and photos people, of persons, especially on their private parts. No? This also includes distribution of those photos and videos. That is the rationale behind this law. The third law is the Access Devices Regulations Act of 2008. Now, we know that there have been a prevalent use of access devices, which includes credit cards, ATMs, or ATM cards. This, which allows people to access financial services without personally doing it over the counter. So there are specific laws which govern financial transactions using the access devices such as these cards. The fourth law, which I have identified, is the Mobile Number Portability Act. Now, this law was legislated because of the need of subscribers, mobile phone subscribers, to maintain their mobile numbers, the use of their mobile numbers, despite changing their telecom carriers. Before, whenever you change your telecom carrier, the provider of your telecom service, there you have no choice. A subscriber has no choice but to change number. But with the introduction and the legislation of this act, which is the Mobile Number Portability Act, it allowed for users, subscribers, to maintain their number. Then we also have what we call the Anti-Child Pornography Act of 2009. Now, basically, we know that the children have been victims of pornography, specifically child pornography. And so this law was crafted in order to address that transgression, that criminal act, specifically on children, because we know that children are a vulnerable sector of our society. The same thing with the next law, which is the Special Protection of Children in Situations of Armed Conflict. Now, we know that children who have suffered armed conflict are more vulnerable, and in fact, they are traumatized. They are a traumatized sector in our society, and hence they also need protection, special protection. And then, of course, we have what we call the Data Privacy Act of 2012, which reinforced the need for data, whether it is financial data, whether it is commercial data, any information to be protected. Because, of course, when we talk of privacy, we always invoke our right for privacy. And so this particular law operationalized that right. And then we have what we call the Safe Spaces Act. What is this Safe Spaces Act? Basically, this law was introduced to complement the existing law on anti-sexual harassment. The Safe Spaces Act, later I will discuss this in more detail, covered gender-based harassment in the streets, in the workplace, in the education and training institution, and even online. And then we also have the Intellectual Property Code. We know that intellectual property is our are meant to be protected, and that when we protect and respect our intellectual property, we encourage more people, to create intellectual property. And that there are properties that must also be protected, not just offline, but even online. And then finally, I also included as one of the laws that govern digital citizenship, the SIM card Registration Act. This law basically requires all subscribers to register their personal information that will be linked with their number. And this law was introduced in order to address the fear of regulators as well as subscribers that their numbers may be used for illegal purposes. In fact, there have been many situations where that fear came to life when numbers, mobile numbers, are being used to undertake threats, to harass people. And so those 10 laws, I believe, are critical so that we will fully understand and appreciate digital citizenship. Now, I have identified the key features of these 10 laws. And coming from these 10 laws, I came up with what we call digital commandments. What comes to mind when we talk of commandments? Basically, we make a reference to the Bible, the commandments. When the word commandment comes to mind, we talk of laws. So, what are these 5 digital commandments? Let me begin with the first one, which is, thou shalt not fall victim to cybersecurity crimes. It is not a surprise that the more we have embraced the power of technology, the more that people will tend to abuse it. In fact, during the onslaught of the COVID pandemic, we have seen the sudden surge or the exponential increase of the number of cyber crimes committed on a local, national, and even on a global scale. Now, for the purpose of this session, what I wish to emphasize or highlight are really just cyber crimes as in the context of the academe. So let me start by identifying the crimes or the threats faced by teachers. So the first one would be phishing. Phishing. This is really, the phishing would mean we have the unauthorized gathering or collection of personal as well as sensitive information. You've observed in the past few years that there have been a lot of instances where phishing emails have circulated, and that there are so many victims of these phishing emails. The usual complaint is that the victim thought that they are sending personal as well as sensitive information to legitimate companies, legitimate websites, only to find out later on that they have sent it to phishing attackers. So what happens when these attackers get sensitive or personal information, especially the login information? Well, it opens a whole gamut of possibilities, including the unauthorized login of your accounts, and hence they will be able to undertake transactions using your accounts. So, and of course, we also have distributed denial of service and data breaches. When you talk about data breaches, this is really just unauthorized access of information. Some systems, some platforms have very low security features, and these platforms, these systems are vulnerable to attacks, vulnerable to data breaches. In fact, studied in the US showed that the attacks nearly tripled in the last year. And then we have what we call ransomware. Now, what do you mean when you say ransomware? Ransomware means that the attackers use a software, a program that attaches to a main or a primary software or program. And when it attacks that primary software or program, it renders it captive, such that the user will not be able to use its features unless a consideration has been paid. So basically, it's like a virtual kidnapping or a virtual carnapping or a virtual hostage. Again, in the US, it has impacted 89 universities, colleges, and school districts in the year 2019. And then, of course, we have IoT vulnerabilities. And when you talk about IoT vulnerabilities, it means that there are attacks that attackers use the vulnerabilities created because of the multi-device, the multi-device system. So we know that today we have all devices, all of these devices, we can actually link with each other. And so because these are different devices, there are actually vulnerabilities that may arise because we are using different devices. And again, the study in the US showed that there are actually around 5,200 attacks per month. That's a significant number, in fact. Now, how do we exactly address or manage this cybersecurity crimes or threats? I'll share 5 tips for the teachers. The first one is really, well, encrypt your data. Make sure that your data, your documents, your files, if ever especially the ones that contain sensitive information, these are not, we make sure that these files are not easily accessible. If there is a need to encrypt it using an encrypting device, then do so. Usually what happens is we encrypt a particular file, document, or folder using an encryption program or tool. And then that the encryption, the data can only be opened when the user enters a password to decrypt the data. The next step is comply with your institution's cybersecurity protocols. Now, a lot of the institutions now have created guidelines to ensure that cybersecurity threats are prevented. Very common of which is, of course, make sure that there are various levels of access to the system, to the portal, to the programs being used, which keeps the data. And this means that there is a hierarchy as to what a particular user can access or can modify or can delete. Another guideline or protocol, another common protocol is ensuring that there is the users, the users of the system, the platform, or the portal should store their data in the appropriate storage space. Meaning you cannot just store it anywhere, in the network or anywhere in the computer. There is a specific way to store it. And again, that's following protocols. The next step is on safeguarding your device from physical attacks. Of course, if you have, if your data is in the cloud, you make sure that the cloud service provider is very reliable when it comes to safeguarding its data. Make sure that where their storage hubs are located in such a way that it mitigates physical attacks. Now, if, say, for example, the data that you have is in an internal hub within your school, which means that you have an online, a local database, then make sure that the database is physically secure, meaning not all people would have access to that database, to the physical database. So, and again, this is to ensure that if ever someone attempts to access the data, he will be physically prevented from doing so. And then, of course, you back up your data as well. This is a very important tip for teachers. Do not just make a single copy of your data. Make sure that if ever something happens, whether it is a virtual attack or a physical attack of the data, make sure that you have a way to access it alternatively. Like an example, a best practice of this would be, say, for example, you have files in your work PC or work laptop. Make sure that these files are also uploaded in your school's cloud service. And then you also, the last tip would be to practice good password management. Of course, we know that there are good passwords and there are bad passwords. One common mistake that teachers make is to set their password as password, meaning the password is password. This is a very common mistake made by teachers. Now, the rule is to make it difficult for people to figure out what is your password. And that means you avoid using password as a password. You avoid using your birthday as a password. What is advised is you use in your password small caps, big caps, a combination thereof. You use numbers as well as special characters, so that to make it a strong password. And then, of course, the part of good password management is to regularly change your password. And that means you have to change the password, let's say once a year. You could also change it twice a year, every quarter, and in meritorious cases, even monthly. So that if ever an attacker would for some serendipitous reason find out what your password is, then because you constantly change your password, there is that possibility that by the time that he or she uses that password, it is no longer the current password. That's why the advice is to regularly change your password. Next one would be, so from teachers, let's now go to children. We know that children are common. They are common targets of cybercrimes. During the pandemic, there was an 81% increase in the number of cyber predators. Very common would be those predators that prey on children for child pornography. So, of course, these children are vulnerable because of their level of maturity, as well as their level of awareness on what is right and what is wrong. And so they become easy targets for these predators. We also have malwares, because children are not so conscious of the different apps or programs that they install in their phones, in their laptops, or in their personal computers. Usually they fall prey to those children's apps or gaming apps. These malwares, actually, when installed to a device, they attack the system, causing it to crash, causing temporary or sometimes permanent damage, such that you don't have any other choice but to reset or to reformat the entire system. And then we also have malicious ads. Now, malicious ads, in 2019, Google removed over 790,000 malicious ads, and these are termed malicious simply because they are bordering on, say, pornography, or say, for example, inappropriate language or inappropriate content. And then we also have identity theft of, what do you mean when you say identity theft? Basically, another person, a stranger, or maybe somebody you know, assumes your identity. And in 2017, a study was conducted again in the US, and they found that over 1 million minors were identified as identity fraud victims. Now, why does this happen? Why is identity theft very common in the US? No, it could be because of, well, oversharing, because of the lack of awareness of parents, because they overshare too much information about their children. Eventually, a stalker or a predator would be able to gather relevant information or data about them to the point that they can already use the information of these children for whatever unlawful purpose. And then we also have online gaming. Now, is online gaming bad? Well, it depends, and it's very subjective. However, it has been found that 30% of youth, aged 11 to 16, have played gambling-style games online. Now, online gaming per se is not bad. However, if we expose them early to what we call gambling-style games or online games, then a possible social problem will arise, because their early exposure to gambling, of course, may potentially develop their gambling addiction. Now, how do we exactly manage these cybersecurity threats or crimes to children? Of course, I have 5 practical tips for parents. The first one would be for parents to teach their children passwords and privacy. I've stated earlier that it's important that we teach our children how to create good passwords, as well as to constantly change those passwords. It's also important to teach children the concept of privacy, meaning not all content has to be shared. The parents have to clearly communicate what type of content can be shared online and what type of content cannot be shared online, especially when it comes to content that will endanger the children. Second tip would be to monitor and communicate. The role of monitoring becomes easier because there are actually applications or programs or program add-ons which help parents monitor where the websites and the apps that the websites and the apps that the children visit. So it's important to check. We do not just leave our children thinking that they are only accessing files that are websites that are only appropriate to them. We do not make that assumption. We need to really monitor them and communicate to them if ever there are websites, apps that they have to avoid. Maybe because these websites or these apps are inappropriate, they are pornographic, they inspire violence, or they are just simply age inappropriate. The third tip is on protecting identity and location. Identity is very important. When you talk about identity, we're talking about personal information. For one, so that one will not be able to experience identity theft, one must secure his or her identity, especially the identity, the personal information of the children, their names, their birthdays, and of course, location. Location is very important. We do not just simply share where we are at the moment, because it could be that a stalker or a cyber predator will come or will go or will visit the location where the children where the child or the children are currently located. So let us avoid sharing location. Fourth tip is to secure the Wi-Fi. Of course, we have what we call a private Wi-Fi and we have what we call a public Wi-Fi. The private Wi-Fi, of course, is more secure. When we use a public Wi-Fi, of course, because everyone is using it, there is also the tendency that the other users of the public Wi-Fi may take advantage or may attack the other users. As much as possible, you use a private Wi-Fi. Now, in order to protect your private Wi-Fi, we also need to regularly change the password. Make sure that only those in your house or in your only those within your family know your Wi-Fi. And then finally, utilize parental controls. In many apps, there are options for parental controls, meaning not all features can be accessed by children if only the parents exercised parental control. This is a very good feature of many apps in order to avoid situations where children are compromised. So the parents actually may dictate the using parental controls how their children can behave online. So we've talked about cybersecurity threats faced by teachers. Then we have children. The next one, of course, will be the cybersecurity threats faced by students. There are several, actually, threats or crimes faced by students. First one will be data theft, meaning there is unlawful taking of data of students. Then we have mobile malware. It attacks the phones, the mobile phones. And this is really brought about by unrestricted downloading made by students without taking into consideration whether those apps that they download are actually trustworthy apps. And then you have very common malicious social media messaging. Many of these social media platforms have messaging features. Of course, not all messages there are friendly or age appropriate. Some are bordering on harassment or cyber stalking or even libelous or scandalous. So and then you have camfecting. In camfecting, basically, this is webcam hacking. Users are unaware that the hackers are actually accessing their webcam. This is a transgression, of course, of the privacy of the students. And then, of course, social engineering. Social engineering, this happens when there is a massive proliferation of fake news. Because of because of massive misinformation, you are able to influence the attitude of the students on a very massive scale. That's what we call social engineering. Now, how do we actually address that? These security threats or crimes faced by students. Of course, the first tip is to avoid sharing of personal information as much as possible. If the information is personal or sensitive, do not share it. Next one would be to use virus protection. There are proprietary as well as free antivirus applications online. Then you can also keep your software up to date. Whenever a software is not updated, it will eventually be subject to a lot of vulnerabilities. So, of course, what we advise is it always has to be up to date so that it will be able to address or defend itself if ever there are new types of virus that will come out. And then be on guard for phishing. Now, one has to be very mindful in terms of the answering requests for information online. How does one become mindful? Check the legitimacy every time of the websites asking for information. Check the legitimacy of the email asking for information. If there is doubt as to the legitimacy or credibility of the one requesting for information, then maybe you can ask the right person, or maybe you can email the organization just to be sure. What happens usually is the phishing attacks victimizes those who are unable to figure out that the information come from illegitimate sources because of the degree of similarity, to the legitimate person or to the legitimate company. I guess we have to credit these attackers to some extent because they have grown very sophisticated to the point that one needs a keen eye in order to distinguish what is legitimate and what is fake. Now, so that is the first commandment. The first commandment is to do not fall prey to cybersecurity crimes or cybersecurity threats. Let me now go to the second digital commandment, and that is, thou shalt not put the names and reputation of people online in vain. Now, what do I mean by this? I'd like to share a story of Jenny. Now, Jenny is a regular college student, a bit introvert in class, and that this Jenny usually spends most of her time online. A regular student. Now, meet the alter Jenny. And when I say alter Jenny, I refer to the same introvert, regular college student Jenny. However, online, Jenny assumes a different persona. This Jenny could be creating what we call an anonymous account with a different, let's say, profile picture. And that Jenny online actually has a tendency to be an online basher, creating sharing rude comments, inappropriate language, just to spur toxic conversation. And then this same Jenny could also be a stalker, meaning she will stalk comments and people who disagrees with her. And that she could also be a troll, meaning it's not just stalking those people, but intentionally leaving hateful comments, replies to those people, to the conversation. And then spammer. And this same Jenny could also be a spammer, meaning sharing redundant messages that can that will annoy the other users. So if you look at the situation, you have this Jenny, our regular Jenny, and we have our alternative Jenny. You see a very common behavior online among our students and even possibly teachers. And this begs the question, how come people behave differently offline and online? Now, a psychologist offered an explanation. Psychologist John Suller calls this the online disinhibition effect. What is this online disinhibition effect? Basically, Suller explains that this online disinhibition effect now results in people either behaving meaner or opening up more online than they normally would in face-to-face conversations. When people act meaner online, it can lead to hostile online environment. So it seems that there is a dichotomy in terms of the behavior of people online and offline. Now, why does this happen? Suller explains that there is what we call this dissociative anonymity. People behave more toxic online because anyway, no one knows them. Another justification would be invisibility, because people behave meaner online simply because people can't see them. Unlike in face-to-face, where if they are mean, well, you can actually call them out face-to-face as well. There's also an asynchronicity, meaning they are meaner because anyway, they still have that time that the actual face-to-face encounter will be later. So that time lag provides them some leeway as to their behavior. And then we have what we call solipsistic introjection. That the one being very toxic online thinks that everything is just in his head, and that his behavior online is really just something that is in his head. And then we have also what we call dissociative imagination, wherein the online basher, the stalker, thinks that his behavior is really simply just a game. Nothing to be serious about. Everything is just a joke. That is what we call dissociative imagination. And then finally, people behave, there is what we call an online disinhibition because of the minimization of status and authority. Meaning, there is that perception that the behavior of people online, the behavior of people online should not be the same with their behavior offline, because the rules online is different. The rules do not apply online, which of course we know is not true, because behavior online and offline, the expected norm, in terms of expected norm, should be the same. Now, because of this online disinhibition effect, a very common problem or a very common crime that happens is what we call cyber libel. People actually commit cyber libel. And what is our legal definition of cyber libel? It refers to the act of defaming or damaging one's reputation using electronic means, such as the internet, social media platforms, or other digital communication channels. It involves the publication of false or malicious statement that harms an individual's character, reputation, or integrity. Now, of course, this is a very serious crime, cyber libel. Coming, of course, rooted on the crime of libel. Cyber libel was given emphasis as one of the crimes in the Cybercrime Prevention Act. In order to understand cyber libel, one must be aware of the elements of cyber libel, so that you know if you are already committing the crime of cyber libel. The first element is that there must be an imputation of a crime or of a vice, real or imaginary, or any act, omission, condition, status, or circumstance. So it means that there must be there is an imputation of a crime, something that transgresses the law is being imputed, or a vice, or a condition or a circumstance. Notice that in this first element, it was mentioned real or imaginary, meaning the crime may be true or it may not be true as well. The condition or the status may be true or it may not be true as well. So it means when we talk of cyber libel, we do not just limit it to fake truth. Even real truth are considered as are covered by cyber libel. Then the imputation must be also made publicly. Now, when you say publicly, meaning it must not be just for the person, for himself. It must be shared to at least a person, another person, and that makes it public. The imputation must also be malicious, meaning there is an evil intent. There is a desire to cause damage, to cause harm to the reputation to another. And then the imputation must be directed to a natural or judicial person or one who is dead. That person may not necessarily be expressly be identified. However, it is enough that one would be able to identify or recognize that person. It is not necessary that you state the name of the person that you wish to impute or the name of the corporation that you wish to impute, but what is important is it can be reasonably ascertained. Then you have the next element, which is the imputation tend to cause dishonor, discredit, or contempt of the person defamed, meaning it causes people to discredit the person. The person or the company must feel maligned because their reputation has been besmirched by another. And then finally, that the imputation was done through the use of a computer system or any other similar means. So there must be a use of a system, a device, in order to effect the libelous act. So if these elements are present, then it may be considered a cyber libel. Now, let us now go to the third digital commandment, which is honor thy privacy of people online. Now, is privacy important? Of course. In fact, one of the rights that we normally invoke is the right to privacy, a right to privacy. Now, what I wish to really stress in this commandment are the right of what we call the data subjects. Now, in the Privacy Act, it was very specific in terms of identifying what are the rights of data subject. And when you talk about data subject, meaning it refers to individuals, companies who has personal, sensitive, or privileged information. In the context of a school, for example, you have data subjects would include the students, the teachers, the administrators, maybe even the parents. Now, these are the ones that share personal, sensitive, or privileged communication to the school. And so these information that they share, because they are sharing information, they are sharing data, and hence they are imbued with certain rights enshrined in the Data Privacy Act. Now, the first one would be the right to be informed. That's why whenever there is a collection of data, the data subjects have to be informed that there is actually a collection of data. The next one will be the right of access, meaning they have, if ever data is being collected, information is being collected, then they can actually also access the data or information that was collected from them. Along with this is the right to rectification, meaning if ever they share data or information to the school, for example, and that they feel that the data that or information that they shared is no longer relevant, or there is a need to change the information, then they can, the part of the right is the right to rectify or to adjust the data. Also with this is the right to object to processing, because it's important that the data subjects should consent to the processing of this data. Along with this is the right to in relation to automated decision making and profiling, because when there is processing involved, there is also along with that is profiling or automated decision making. Now, the data subjects must consent to that as well. And then we have the right to be forgotten. Conversely, this may also be called the right to deletion. If ever there is data that was given, it could also be taken back. It could also be removed from the system, from the program, from the database. Because the storage of data is not perpetual. The information or the data may only be stored for as long as it is needed or for as long as it is necessary. The moment that it's no longer necessary for the company or the organization or the one who holds the information or stores the information, if it's no longer necessary to store the information data, then it has to be deleted from the system. Also, the right to data portability. This means that the data subject has the right to transfer the information, move it to, say, another storage, to another platform when deemed necessary. And then finally, the last right of the data subject is the right to restrict processing, meaning a certain level of processing may be allowed, however, subject to restrictions. So So these are this leads us to a deeper appreciation that in school, for example, we are processing a lot of data. Teachers, for example, would have data on the grades of their students. Teachers would also have data on the performance of their students. They would have data, personal, maybe even sensitive, personal, sensitive information of their students. Now, we know that because we are entrusted with those information, we have to observe the rights of our data subject, which is the privacy rights of our students. If we are, for example, the part of the registrar of a school, for example, we know that we cannot just give out information of our students without their consent. We cannot share to others, give access others to student information without the student saying yes, that I will allow others to access it, because only the data subject is given that privilege, unless of course there is authorization or consent from the latter. Now, let's now go to the fourth digital commandment. So far, we've talked about cybercrime. Then we move to cyber libel. Then we move to privacy. Privacy. At this point, we'll talk about intellectual property. Now, we know that intellectual property is it's a very important resource of an individual or companies or organizations. Now, why do we need to understand intellectual property in the context of digital citizenship? The reason for that is really because some intellectual properties are very prone to abuse, especially in the digital space. And for the purpose of this session, I will just zoom in my discussion on copyright. Among the intellectual properties are patents, trademarks, industrial designs, and then of course we have copyrights. Now, copyrights are essentially products of the intellect. These are products of artistic art of the mind, which could be artistic or literary in nature. Among those considered as copyright intellectual properties are books, articles, references, researches, which are often used not just offline, but even pervasively used and distributed in the digital space. So the general rule, what is a general rule? The general rule is, of course, that whenever we make use of copyrights, we have to secure the authorization or consent of the author. So, for example, if we are going to share a particular book with a digital in a digital version, like in a PDF version, we are not supposed to just share it without regard to the author. We have to get the consent of the author whenever we share it. However, there are what we call limitations to this general rule. If ever we do not share, we do not get authorization or consent from the author, of course, we will be guilty of what we call copyright infringement. Now, what I will be sharing with you are the limitations to copyright infringement. Now, what are these? First is recitation or performance of a work once it has been lawfully made accessible to the public, if done privately and free of charge, or if made strictly for a charitable or religious institution or society. So notice the keywords there. Made accessible to the public if done privately and free of charge, or strictly for charitable or religious institution. So no copyright infringement there. Now, making of quotation from a published work, very common for us to quote from published works. Provided that these are compatible with fair use. Now, later, I will share with you the principle or the concept of the doctrine of fair use. And then we have reproduction or communication to the public by mass media of an article on current political, social, economic, scientific, or religious topic, or lectures, addresses, and other works of the same nature. So basically, because when we talk of political, social, economic, scientific, or religious topic, these are general or common knowledge. And so one cannot really claim that one has copyright over these general knowledge. And then we have reproduction and communication to the public of literary, scientific, or artistic works. So very similar to the previous provision. Then inclusion of work in a publication, broadcast, or other communication to the public, or sound recording or film, if such inclusion is made by way of illustration or for teaching purposes. Now, so here, please take note, teachers. Now, if we're using it for teaching purposes, then that does not fall as copyright infringement. Provided, however, that the source and of the name of the author are mentioned. So we can use the publication, the broadcast, work in a publication, broadcast, or communication, provided that we mention the source and the name of the author. And then, of course, recording made in schools, universities, or educational institutions for the use of the school also. And then we have the making of ephemeral recordings by broadcasting organizations. So when we talk of ephemeral recordings, these are recordings that are done by broadcasting organizations. That after it has been broadcasted, the data is deleted effectively. So, and then we have the use, make use of those works under the direction and control of the government by the National Library or by educational, scientific, or professional institutions where use is for public interest. And then you have public performance or communication to the public of a work where no admission fee is charged. And then you have public display of the original or a copy, provided that the work has already been published or that the original copy displayed has been sold, given away, or otherwise transferred to another person by the author to his successor. So no infringement in that case. And then finally, you have the use of a work for the purpose of any judicial proceeding or for giving of a professional advice by a legal practitioner. If you observe, many of the lawyers, whenever we use a work, no, to be used as evidence in court, we use it as it is. And when we copy it, we reproduce it, that does not fall still as copyright infringement. Now, for us to fully understand these exceptions on copyright infringement, we have to understand this doctrine of fair use, which basically states that the fair use of a copyrighted work for criticism or comment, for news reporting, for teaching, including the creation of multiple copies for classroom use, for scholarship, research, and similar purposes, is actually not an infringement of the copyright. So we have to understand that if the work has been utilized for this purpose, then it may fall under the doctrine of fair use. Now, we know that online, there are a lot of copyrighted work that is being used by teachers or students. So this will be our legal justification if ever we use those copyrighted materials. More exceptions, as mentioned in the Intellectual Property Code, the private reproduction of a published work in a single copy to be used for research or private study is also allowed. A library can also make a single copy via reprographic reproduction. There can also be a reproduction of a backup copy for a computer program. This is also allowed under our IT, Intellectual Property Code. Now, let's move to the fifth digital commandment, and that is, thou shalt make online a safe space for everyone. So, this is inspired by the Safe Spaces Act, which basically highlighted this gender-based online sexual harassment. In the previous law, which is the anti-sexual harassment law, it does not cover a situation where the harassment is made online. But however, in the Safe Spaces Act, it already covers online sexual harassment, wherein the harassment includes acts that use information and communications technology in terrorizing and intimidating victims through physical, psychological, and emotional threats, unwanted sexual, misogynistic, transphobic, homophobic, and sexist remarks and comments online, whether publicly or through direct and private messages, invasion of victims' privacy through cyber stalking and incessant messaging, uploading and sharing without the consent of the victim any form of media that contains photos, voice, or video with sexual content, any unauthorized recording and sharing of any of the victim's photos or any information online. So here it is clear that what is prohibited is not just the uploading of the information of the photo or the video, but even the sharing of the photo and the video. So you will be liable just because you shared. Not necessarily it's not necessary that only the one who uploaded the video or the photo will be held liable, even the ones that have shared the photo or the video. Also impersonating identities of victims online or posting lies about the victim to harm their reputation or filing false abuse reports to online platforms to silence victims. So, for example, we have several cases wherein a person will be bullied by a group of, a student may be bullied by a group of students, and they will do massive reporting. They will abuse the report feature. That is also considered as online sexual harassment. Now, here's an important info. Where do you actually report or complain? Where do you actually report or complain if ever you experience all of these crimes or violations? For cybercrimes, you can actually report to the NBI Cybercrime Division or the PNP Anti-Cybercrime Group or the DOJ Office of the Cybercrime. For privacy violations, well, you can go to the National Privacy Commission. And for IP copyright infringement, you can file your complaint with the special commercial courts. So in conclusion, what do I wish to emphasize here? The first insight is that the laws are in place to promote order and justice in the digital space. So one, as a digital citizen, one should not worry if there are threats online, because there are already laws in place that will curb or deter the commission of these crimes. You just have to know where to lodge your complaint if ever you experience a threat or a crime. The second point that I wish to make is that who you are online is who you are offline. So as a teacher, as a student, be polite and courteous. Just because you're in a virtual environment does not give you a right to spread fake news, spread misinformation about others, because you might be guilty of cyber libel. And then the third point that I wish to really emphasize is that privacy is protected even online, especially in this age where information is pervasively shared and distributed online. We need to have that consciousness that not all information must be shared, and that there must be a way to protect the sharing of this personal, sensitive, or privileged information. Fourth point, simple: respect copyright. Of course, there are exceptions that have been identified by the Intellectual Property Code. Good for us in the academe. However, of course, just because we have this privilege does not mean we have to abuse it. We still have to make sure that we are bound by the doctrine of fair use. And then finally, keep it safe. Keep it safe, meaning keep the online environment safe. The online environment must be free from gender-based harassment. People should be able to use social media. Students should be able to use social media without the fear of cyber stalking, without the fear that someone will harass them, will bully them. And so at this point, I would like to thank everyone for listening to my session. And I am now ready to take on questions if you have questions about the topic, I am alert.